from Psychologies magazine, and we are live today with the wonderful Max Dickins, who is an improviser. We have an improviser with us in the room. Max is the the author of a new book called Improvise, and he is a director of Hoopla, which is the first improvisation training school in the world. I love it, Max. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Susie, and I'm really looking forward to this. I should say, we're the first improvisation school in Europe, not the whole world. There are some folks in America who will pick me up on that if I don't say that. But we were one of the first, so yeah. But thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, great. Come on. Why let the truth get in the way of a good interview? Hello.
Exactly, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I was improvising, Max. I was improvising.
Yeah, well, you did a great job.
To start us off, I mean, for people who, I know improvisation is a kind of a term that's used in the kind of theatre world. But give me a definition of improvisation that shows the relevance for people listening to the Psychologies audience today. How can it help us?
Well, that's a fantastic first question, because you're right. You're addressing the elephant in the room here. It's like improv is what? It's comedy, right? It's we used to sing it on the stage in comedy clubs. It's Whose Line Is It Anyway? Shows like that. It's Mock the Week. But I like to define improvisation as the art of acting without a script. Now, yeah, we normally do that on stage for entertainment, but just think about how much of our lives are improvised. Most of communication is improvised. It's an improvisational act, communication. When we're working with people to solve new problems, it's in an act of improvisation. We're acting without a script. I mean, now, the new normal, I mean, what's around the corner? Nobody knows. We're all acting without a script. So this stuff, I think, it's not a niche skill or a mindset at all. It's something we all do every day. And I think life, to a large extent, is improvisation.
Sure. So this idea of, I love this idea, because I think if our back page columnist, Pema Chodron, she's a Buddhist nun. Ooh, yeah. And her whole thing is around, well, not her whole thing. One of the things that I really resonate with when she talks is around uncertainty. And I suppose when you're on stage and improvising, it's about how we can improvise, how to deal with uncertainty. You have no idea what's coming towards you. But I know in improvisation, you call it something. What was it called? When somebody, it's a bid or something. What's it called?
An offer. Yeah.
That's it. I knew it was something like that. So tell me a little bit about that, because I think constantly things are coming towards you. And what do you mean by an offer? Because I think it's either an offer to be triggered, like, oh, your hair standing on end, or it's an offer for an opportunity. But really, we need to find a way of it all to be opportunities to grow, no matter how hideous it can be, the next lockdown, for example, whatever. So how do we reframe that idea of, a bid or
so and the way we understand offers in improvisation, and I'll tie it into what you said at any moment now, is, I mean, anything somebody does or says or the world does or offers us is what we call an offer. And so we're trained to look at them and notice them. And actually a big thing that separates people from the moment and from opportunity in the moment is we don't notice offers because we're stuck in our head. We're stuck in old scripts. So talk about personal development. How often are we stuck in old scripts? And what's been great from a personal point of view with the lockdown and afterwards is it's broken me out of old scripts, and I found new opportunities right in front of myself, but I had to be disrupted out of that script. So offers are there in the moment. So what improvisers are trained to do is firstly to get out of their head and get out the script up there and into the moment, really present, quite similar to your Buddhist exactly, and get as present as possible, focus on listening and being aware in the moment, but also to treat everything as an offer, even the stuff that looks a bit ugly or a bit weird or a bit of a challenge. How can I use this is the mindset. And maybe linked to this is, and what improvisers concentrate on a lot, is we don't have to know the whole plan to start. So improvisation is very much a learn by doing skill set, and being aware that we don't need to know 10 steps ahead. We can just do one step at a time. And Keith Johnston, who is one of the gurus of improvisation, stage improvisation, but he does lots of workshops. A lot of people do improv for personal and professional development. He talks about improvisers write the scene by walking backwards through it. So we don't know where we're going, but we do know where we've been. So it's about being aware about what have we created and how can we make the most of this, as well as seeing what's right in front of our eyes. So if there was one takeaway, it would be, what's the offer here? So you're having a conversation with someone, they're turning up with offers. It might be what they're saying, like the words, the ideas. It might be how they're holding themselves or the tone of their voice. And there's so much that we're being presented with every moment and every day. It's just we don't notice it, and therefore we can't adapt and use it.
I love it. So I love this idea because it's a very practical and real way to actually. One is almost being mindful, aren't you? You're trying to be present rather than, that thing when people are talking and you're kind of thinking about what you're going to say. It's actually really taking a step back and really listening and hearing what's really going on. So how do we recognize an offer? You said something like, how do we use it? So what would be a healthy way of listening for the offer and thinking, how are we going to use it? So in terms of work, so at the moment, we're possibly going into lockdown again today in London, certainly. And how do we, is that an offer? How do we use that? How do we stay present? And how do we frame this in a way that makes us feel open to opportunities versus thinking?
So I mean, there's lots we can do. So firstly, let's address the first thing you mentioned there, which was listening. So first thing, like noticing offers and listening for them, that's half of it. But the other half, and how improvisers think about listening, which I think is a really good tip to take away, is we define listening a little bit differently. We define listening as the willingness to be changed. So it's not enough just to hear it. You've got to let it land on you and change you. So you ask me a question, it should change my response if I'm really listening to you. If I notice something in my environment and I notice that offer, it's got to change me in some way. So a lot of that is not just noticing, which is the first half. The second half is letting go and surrendering the plan that you've already got. You think about a great conversation you have with someone. It's someone who lets go of where they think this conversation's going to follow what's actually happening. And that is the same in, for example, lockdown. The offer in lockdown is, we've got to completely adapt our behavior. And you can either hold on to your old plans, hold on to your old vision and your old skill set, or you can go, right, this is emotionally hard, but I'm going to let go of that and address the opportunities in the moment. And before we started this interview, Susie and I were having a chat about some of the positives that we've managed to drag out of this situation. From a Hoopla perspective, we've been able to work with audiences and people way beyond the boundaries of the UK because of this. So we've noticed it. We've let go of our old plan of running face-to-face workshops and classes, and we've doubled down on making our online offering brilliant. And we've come out of that by letting go of that plan with something now that beyond COVID, we know is going to be a great resource for us. So to really get more specific there, it's not just noticing, it's letting go and then making the decision to pursue that offer. So that would be the complete.
Okay, so it's noticing. So it's noticing, first of all, the change. And I love what you said, the willingness to change.
Yeah.
The willingness to change, the listening, the definition is the willingness. I love that idea. So first of all, you were noticing, you're listening as in your willingness to change. And then what was it?
And then letting go and surrendering the old plan.
Surrendering your plan, which is lovely because it's about getting back into flow, which is all getting back into flow and dealing with the what is. I mean, again, not to keep mentioning Pema Chodron, but what she talks about is suffering is when we're kind of holding on. We're holding on to the plan and holding on to anything. It feels very Buddhist, actually, the improvisational approach. It is
so similar to Buddhism in terms of the general mindset. And I think this letting go stuff, and there's the concept I'll introduce in a moment, which is another technique we can use. But I think this idea of letting go, if you see it on stage, it allows us to address what the last person said and really build what's actually happening, not what we want to happen or what we assumed would happen. It's like, what is actually going on here? So you can do that to life. You can do that in conversations. And I don't know about you, Susie, but when this thing first happened, COVID first became oh my God, this is going to really affect our lives. I felt a lot of grief, and it was grief about opportunities that were going to fall away. It was a vision of my future that I had. We had to push back publication of the book, of what I was doing, which was delivering a lot of events and a lot of face-to-face stuff. But I had to let go of that to embrace what we could do. And I don't know if we'd be having this conversation if this whole event hadn't happened. And it's a wonderful opportunity, but only if you let go of what you think you should be doing or you would rather be doing.
But I think can I just say that there's a really good point you've made there around grief. And I think often we hold on because we don't want to feel grief. Do you know what I mean? So we go, no, we're going to definitely do this because then I don't have to face the grief. So I think it also, this improvisation idea, it also takes a lot of courage because you've got to be willing to feel your feelings.
Absolutely. So if you've ever seen, to relate to your point, if you've ever seen an improv show, and this is another concept I might share, when a scenes all are improvised, made up in the moment based on audience suggestions, but when the scene is maybe not working or when it needs to finish, we do what's called a sweep. So someone runs over front of the stage and ends it, and something new happens. But it's a really scary thing to do, because what are you left with? You're left with a blank, empty stage, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So really in life, we need to think about, we can apply the same analogy. Do I need to sweep the scene here? Do I need to finish it? And why don't we do that? It's because, like you say, we don't want to feel grief, and we don't want to be faced with, I don't know what's going to happen next. But what improvisers are great at is realizing you don't have to know what happens next, as long as you've got a methodology to deal with change and create. So if you can notice the offers in the environment through brilliant listening and being really aware, if you can let go of old plans, and if you can treat everything as an offer, you have a skill set there where you can create even though you don't know what's going to happen next. And there is one more thing I thought I might throw into the mix here, because this is kind of like the big headline idea of improv, and it's such a practical one you can use straight away. And it's what we call the philosophy of yes and. So improv is all about not just listening and noticing offers, letting go of the old plan, but thirdly, how do I accept it and build off it? What can I say yes and to here? And when we're chatting, I'm trying to accept and build off your question. When you have amazing conversations or you're working with other people, that's what we're doing. And what can we do when life throws us something? Can we say yes and to this? Or do we do what we often do, which is to say, yeah, but, and negate the offer, ignore it or shut it down? So can you be a yes and sort of person?
I think that's a great idea, isn't it? So it's letting go of our old thinking, letting go of our old plans, acknowledging that you may feel grief and that's difficult, sweeping it, and then say yes and. There's also the piece around emptiness. You talked about an empty stage.
Yeah.
And I know in my background is coaching. They talk about a vacuum and being comfortable with the vacuum, because a vacuum sucks new stuff in. And if you don't create that space, that emptiness, we're constantly trying to fill our lives with, and it's so easy these days with these things, bing, 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 everything's, we can fill our lives completely. So creating a space for the yes and, for the really listening, I think that is again a huge life skill, which it sounds like improvisation, if we play with these ideas, could give us access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea of creating a vacuum and creating space. That's really well put. And a lot of this stuff is, these concepts are not necessarily intellectually, but what the challenge is, how do we become self-aware of these blockages we have, so that we can then actually execute them and overcome these emotional blockages? So that's because why do people not want to create that vacuum? It's fear. But I think, sorry, go on. You're about to say something.
Well, I think it totally, and I think I had a talk with a Zen person the other day, a Zen expert, and they were sort of saying that we hold on to certainty because we're afraid. Because I was complaining, I was going on a bit of a rant about certain people in the media, having very strong opinions, and it's about this and it's about that. And they said, if you could have compassion, because the reason why they're holding on so tightly to this is the right way that we should live our lives, is because they're afraid. Because if they let go and consider another worldview, it's too scary for them.
Yeah. And I talk about that in the book a little bit, is that there's all sorts of research into, we have an uncertainty bias. We don't want to embrace uncertainty, which is what a new opinion is, right? It's like, I don't know what that means for me and my identity, or what it means about the truth. There's maybe another phrase from that improvisers use that might be useful here, which is we say, hold on tightly, let go lightly, which means that you don't want to just automatically throw away some things you think are right or important. You want to hold on tightly, but you also want to let go lightly, which is when you are faced with a better way, you want to be firstly listen to it with a willingness to be changed, and then let go of it. So hold on tightly, let go lightly. And then, because we're talking about fear as well, there's maybe another quote that comes to mind, is because we keep on getting to this point of, what do we do when we don't know what to do, and we have this fear, and people get in their head and they get this anxiety, these anxious thoughts. And there's this really lovely quote by an improv teacher, and I talk about it in the book, called Jill Bernard, and she says, if you want to get out of your head, then get into something else. And I think that's a really wonderful way of dealing with this anxiety all of us are feeling at the moment. That other person in improv is your scene partner. So I'm making something in the middle of a vacuum. I can rely on the skill set, these little things we've talked about, but I can also rely on my scene partner and making them look good. And if I'm putting my focus on other people and like, how can I be of service here? Then the anxiety lifts and the fear lifts. And that's such a practical thing to do.
Yeah. I know that, as editor of psychologies, I get invited to a lot of do's. Yeah. And I get nervous about going, because you're there on your own and you've got to go in, and what I think to myself is, my survival mechanism for that is just ask questions of people, because everyone feels the same. So just keep asking questions, take the focus off myself and my own anxiety or nervousness, and ask questions of somebody else. And that has served me so well. So I can just go into now and just think, okay, who can I talk to? Who can I ask questions? And it's great for me, because but also I get to meet great people and build better connections. So I think that's a great tip, Max. Really great. Yeah. Really, really great.
Yeah, that's a really good example of using that technique. A lot of people come to improv because they want to get better in that situation, and they discover the answer, as you've put so well, is actually not about what you do, but how you show up, and it's about listening well. We also have another idea in improv where if you want to sound really clever, or you want to sound really fluid in the moment, just be obvious. And you can, in making small talk, you don't have to say a genius thing. You can say something as simple as, your accent, you sound like you're from Yorkshire. And then they tell you they're from Yorkshire. You go, what's that pendant there? What's that around your neck? That's interesting. Oh, well, my grandmother gave it to me. Oh, tell me about that. So we can connect with people in really simple ways. And it's not about being quick or clever or funny, as often people think about improvising and being amazingly socially. It's about showing up with a willingness to listen and be obvious.
Yeah, this is great. What I love what you're saying, like, is that all of these techniques of improvisation can be used in really very real ways to help make our lives better, especially in the current climate, to not just survive but thrive, and use this as an opportunity to kind of use all of these skills. I love it. So this is the wonderful Max Dickins, who has just written a new book called Improvise. Oh, let's have a look. Oh, I like the cover. Let's put it right up to the camera.
There you are. It's a nice color, isn't it?
I like it. I love the pink. Obviously, I'm a bit of a pink girl, so I love that. That's really good. And Max is also the director of Hoopla. So if you've got companies that are doing all these online workshops as well, so you can also get in touch with Hoopla if you want Max to maybe create some self-development workshops for your team. Max, thank you so much for your time today. That was really useful and really, really interesting. I didn't realize how near.
Thank you. I learned a lot as well from you.
All right, lots of love.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.